Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning and good afternoon. It's November 6th. It's the Konflux community call. Our agenda is in its usual place. And just as a reminder, this is a meeting we record and we post on YouTube afterwards. So just so you're aware, that's what happens with conversation here. Here's a link to the agenda. And I see up first, we've got Barak talking about Konflux privacy statement.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. It's a boring topic, so I try to keep it short. We want to run some analytics tools on our websites. If you do that, you need to do certain things to meet various regulations at various places, like asking for user consent to place cookies on their machines. And the starting point for that is that you need to have a well-organized privacy statement that states what you're going to do and why. So I'm trying to make one for Konflux that we can use throughout all our web assets. So I have a link to the PR in the community call document. Please have a look. Let's try to get this merged, and then I can go from there. Yes, go ahead, Ralph.
Thanks, Barak, for adding it. Is this a situation where do you think all we need a privacy statement, or do we also need a dialogue on the doc sites that allow people to indicate whether they accept our cookie or not?
Yeah, we will need both. I mean, I'm hoping there are multiple. I forget the way to call those systems, but there are systems that provide you with such confirmation dialogues as well as other dialogues for users to request their data or request for it to be deleted. So I'm hoping to adopt one of those systems, but all of them build off having a certain privacy statement that you link everything to. So that's the first step.
Great. That makes sense to me. Thank you. Cool. Andrew says in sidebar for Google Analytics, he thinks they might have a universal opt-out for all analytics that they use, think being the operative word. Cool. Thanks, Andrew. We'll look into it. Async, yeah.
Yeah, I did look into it. They have an API you can use, but you kind of need to build, your forms and stuff around it. So we can definitely use the API, but we still need our own privacy statement and other user-facing tools to make use of their backend API.
Cool. Thumbs up. Okay, everybody, please do as Barak asked. Let's go review that and get it merged so we can move forwards on that. Analytics would be nice as we go into next year and we can see how the community is trending and stuff. How many people are accessing docs? Thank you, Barak. Hongwei, I think you're up next. Are you ready?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, look for it.
Yeah. Here is a feature about improve GitLab comment integration, and the users mentioned that there are a lot of comments in GitLab merge request. Actually, recently, integration service and the pipeline service has released commit to stop posting comments when commit status success. And we also fell back to update existing comment for different snapshot, but the same component. And the pipeline service do it similar to update the existing comment instead of creating one new comment. So my question is, do we need to allow users to disable our comments by supporting comment strategy? And I noticed you commit one PR in integration service. Yeah, thanks. So my question is, do we need to do it, or it's a must, or it's a better to do?
Yeah, Gal, go ahead. We'll use handstand.
Yeah, I think that basically you can follow what pipelines as code is doing. If it is possible to update the status of the pipeline through the, I forgot the name of this API, pipelines API or checks API. You can ask like the folks from pipelines as code exactly how it is called. If you can do the update through this API, it should be preferred, because then users can see the status of the pipeline, get a link to Konflux, and without like spamming them with a lot of comments. So this is what pipelines as code tries to do by default. And second option, if they cannot use this API because, for example, the pipelines as code does not have permissions, because the PR is coming from a fork or something like this, they fall back to use comments. Now, they also discovered that it is possible to support using the status API when MRs are coming from a fork, if there is .gitlab YAML and with some even dummy pipeline defined in the repositories. Now, we don't know if it is something that is by design or just like it works by coincidence. So this is still something to discover. So right now, not something that we can really count on. The last option is to disable comments, and there are two other things that they have, which is to disable comments totally, and they have a new feature which is for updating comments in place. So each pipeline will have a single comment, and they will just update it. So this is something that they may implement. Those are all of the options. This what pipelines as code team has. And I think that you can do the same. Follow the same patterns that they follow.
I have a question on that, which is the new code that will just update the same comment. Is that configured by the user by setting a different comment strategy on the repository resource?
I don't know. They didn't implement it yet.
Okay.
Let's take a look at the feature.
Yeah. I think, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry. Actually, in integration service, if we have one existing comment for one snapshot and scenario, we create one comment, and there is a bug. Actually, we should update the comment according to the component and the scenario, so we can reduce the comments. So for each component and scenario, we have only one component. If there is some updates, we will just update the existing comments. Yeah. Users see a lot of comments because there is a bug. We add comments according to a snapshot and a scenario. Every time when we retrigger the build pipeline run, a new snapshot will be created. So a new comment will be created, and that's a bug. If we fix it, so there is no more comments on merge request. If the commit status cannot be created for some reason, like permission issue, yeah. So if the commit status is created successfully, there is no comments on merge request. No.
Okay. So, sounds good. So like, so what is like the question? Which information are you trying to get from anyone on this call?
Courtney, you want to go first?
Yeah, just to clarify. So the question is, we are already nearly there in line with the pipeline as code and even with the future asks, but we are asking if it's necessary for us to also implement an option to set a comment strategy, and because it would need to be set in a different place. So
yeah, and part of what is especially weird about this is that the way that you set a strategy for pipelines as code is to set something on the spec of the repository resource. But in general, we don't let users manipulate the repository resource. It's not part of the RBAC that we grant them. The repository resource is managed by the component. So like, it does feel like a good feature to be able to let users disable all comments in case they have a very large and complicated setup we never imagined, and they don't even want single updated comments. But it doesn't seem necessary. You know what I mean? Like, so if we do it in integration service, we need to also think about how to plumb, either give the user rights to manipulate the repository resource, or give them a way to plumb this through the component so they can set a comment strategy on the component and have it propagated to the repository, which we don't have. But necessary, I don't know. It would be good, yes. We certainly have users today who are barraged by comments, and so there's this maybe feeling of like, just give me a way to turn it all off. But if we can make it better, maybe that's not necessary, and let's deliver on that, and then check with the users and say, do you still need a way to turn this all off? And if they do, we could, look at the next step. So I see Mikola and then Barak.
Yeah, Rolf, so basically you just told what I wanted to say, is that technically we can bridge it, like create a field in component and then update repository resource for users. But the question whether we need to do it, if we probably gonna have better way of doing it. So technically it's doable, but I guess now we need to just decide what to do, whether we need to support like this disabling of commenting now, or just improve existing functionality so users don't need it. Like technically we can implement this easily.
Barak?
Yeah, I was wondering if we could do it on a pipeline basis by having a label on the pipeline run or something along those lines. Like, I don't know if that's even technically possible, but that's like the closest place for the users to think about configuring stuff for the pipeline output.
I think in case of the integration service, then that would need then to be set on the integration test scenario. So I think it would probably then throw us off alignment. I think I agree with the general sentiment that we proceed with optimizing our current comment strategies that's already placed, and make sure that the users receive one comment per component, which is constantly updated. And if the users require more, but as Mikola suggested, the integration service could basically feed off the same point of information and check the component for the comment strategy and just do what's directed there. So it wouldn't be a huge ask for us.
Hongwei, can I ask, are you in touch with users who, once we deliver the feature set that we're currently working on, can you collect feedback from them on whether or not it's working for them and bring it back to let the group know? Well, if they do need further changes, we'll need to sync up. It'll need to be a larger change in both integration service and probably build service.
Yes, sure, I will. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that wraps that one up. Any other comments or questions on that topic? Okay, if not, I'm looking at our agenda. I see Pavel was up to talk about starting a VM in the cloud, but he can't attend today. He gives his apologies. And that gets us next to Barak. You have a topic on the proxy configuration ADR.
Yeah, thanks. Just bringing that up again. I kind of mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, and I've seen a lot of activity around it in the last couple of days. I did make an effort to kind of answer all the comments and try to add stuff to the ADR to clarify everything that seems to have needed clarification. So I just want to ask people to have another look, and let's see if we can kind of move this to a close at this point. Or if anyone here wants to raise anything kind of major with it that we should change, please go ahead.
I'm looking at the milestone setting on it. It's set for KGC to make a decision on it today. When we looked at it a few days ago, I think we thought that nothing needed to change with it, but I see maybe some new comments have come in just in the last 2 days. Anybody on the call want to speak up about anybody have blocking concerns? Things that should cause us to really slow down and evaluate? we'll of course review the comments later, but now's a good opportunity to speak up if you do have concerns.
My concern is about how we mount those config maps into pipeline run. The rest of my comments is just like probably cosmetic, nice to have, or not blocking.
And Martin, you say you have concern. I'm trying to phrase it back. You have concern about how the pipeline run should mount the config map or get access to the config map?
The idea writes that we have two config maps, one at Konflux level, one of tenant level. And I'm curious how we get content of those config maps into pipeline run, for init task.
Barak, I thought that like those will be read using the API, right? Not by mounting them.
Yeah, probably the API. I mean, we can. That's an implementation detail. Like we can argue in this when we implement it, unless people are extremely opposed to trying to read any config maps.
Like the global one, it is not possible to mount it.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think we want to read a couple of keys, so I don't think we really need to mount the whole config map in any case. But again, you know, that's unless so the way I look at it, you know, I break the question into two. You know, question number one is how exactly will we access them? Will it be the API or mounting or both or whatever? And then question number two, should we access config maps at all? If somebody thinks that we shouldn't be accessing any config maps at all, then that kind of scraps the whole ADR. So I want to know which.
But if we are going to use API, we have to add a role-based access to those service accounts.
Yeah, so one of them is in the same namespace, so that should be less of a problem. The one in the Konflux info namespace is meant to be globally accessible anyway. That's why we picked that namespace. So there probably should be stuff in place already for accessing it, and if not, we'll add whatever we need.
Go ahead, Mikla.
So it's a bit different topic. Like for the same ADR, I left comments. So my concern, while I still understand the reasons behind it, my concern is that we use reverse order, and that could confuse users because usually people expect that we have like local configuration parameter in the pipeline, that it has the highest priority. But here I might have pipeline parameter like, I don't know, use proxy or don't use proxy. And if global parameter like setting, even in not my tenant, in some cluster tenant says, yes, use proxy, despite I have parameter no proxy, it will be used. So that's highly confused in my opinion. And yeah, while I understand reasoning that we might need to like disable all the stuff in case of a disaster, but the question is, how often do we expect such a disaster that we need to disable it altogether instead of just putting dummy proxy? Like it's easier to shut down one service and set up just transparent proxy that does nothing in case of some problem. So we can handle that without this confusion. Or alternatively, as I suggested, we could try to like use at least parameters that says defer to global configs. So at least it's clear to users that, okay, it's not like comes behind my back, so I don't see it. So I have defer parameters, so I expect that this value is inherited. Okay, thank you.
I can give an example. In OpenShift, there are network policies and there are admin network policies. And this is like usually we are used to have that, like the closest thing to the, let's say, feature is the thing that decides, and not like and not like the what we have now, where the order of precedence is the opposite. But another example that I can give about OpenShift with network policies and admin network policies is that they allow the admin network policies to take precedence, to allow the admin of the cluster to control the traffic, the global traffic that flows in the cluster. So maybe we are not used to, because not all of us are sysadmins, but I guess that when it comes to like someone that runs the service, someone that runs the cluster, someone that sees the infrastructure globally, those things become more common because the admin needs to have the ability to have like the final word. But specifically in this feature, I think that the reverse order of precedence does make sense. I hope that we won't have any outages or anything that will require us to not use it. But as we know, those are Konflux is huge, complex, a lot of moving parts, and we need to have all the tools that we have in our disposal in case of a crisis.
How do we expect rollout will work, like in practice, for a tenant like Red Hat's tenants or the Fedora cluster? Do we expect to make the new task available with its new capabilities to check this variety of config maps and settings with its own precedence order? And then that, like, let's say for the Red Hat cluster, we set the global setting to say, yes, use proxy. And Barak says no.
From my point of view, I'm thinking that for the common kind of general case, we will almost never use the global settings and let users switch on and off as they wish. The global settings are really, they are emergency escape hatches. Essentially, we're in disaster scenario. We turn on the global switch just to quiet things down until we can settle things.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't intend for those to be generally in major use most of the time.
I was starting to wonder if, when Gal was talking about, as an admin, we need to be able to control traffic on the cluster in the event of an emergency. But it also could just be simple. If we want everybody to use the proxy all the time for everything anyways, we could roll out the task with its new capabilities and not encourage users to opt in terms of their parameter setting and just use the global config map. And if we do that, like, do we even need the other, like, can we simplify it so there's not complex precedence rules?
Well, it's a balancing act between what will generate more noise on our support channels. And it's kind of an inversion of our design principle so far, which kind of let the user have very good control over what the pipelines are doing. So I'm kind of trying to align with that while still making the balance of giving the admins the big off switches or on switches they would need in certain scenarios. So it's a balancing act, right? So yes, I agree with everybody that says that the inversion seems counterintuitive. However, I don't like trying to invert it in a different way. Ultimately, removes the ability of the user to indicate, in the common case, whether they want it off or on. And I still, my inclination is to leave control to the user if I can for most of the time.
See Nicola and Adam and myself.
Yeah, so first of all, I still don't understand why we just can't use different proxy backend in case of disaster. So if we, for example, have proxy enabled, so we, instead of faulty service, for example, if we've got it, for some reason, I hope not, we can just set transparent squid or something, that it just traffic goes through without any modification. So it's the same as disabling proxy for the user. Well, unless we have problem with networking in the cluster, but in that case, nothing would work anyway, right? If we have broken nodes. And second, this way of reverse priority limits users' freedom. In terms of what if I would like to have proxy, for example, enabled for everything except a few pipelines? There is no way to do it currently because tenant config takes precedence. So if I say no for those two pipelines, don't use proxy, that don't use proxy will be overridden by tenant config. So I'm not able to do this config anyway. And if I really would like to do it, so I would need to do the opposite, set global to, well, it even doesn't work again. So I would need to manually put the value in every single pipeline. And if I have 100 of them, it's becoming a disaster in the end. So third point, maybe Ralph is right here. So maybe we don't need this level of details and just make the pipeline follow just one global rule. Maybe it would be even better, I don't know. So we avoid a lot of confusion on user side because I anticipate a lot of questions in user support for this problem, like, hey, I have false or true in parameter, but it behaves differently. What the heck is going on? So I just see it already. Thanks.
We got a bunch in the stack. Adam, myself, Gal, and Barak.
Oh, like I'm just like I completely agree with Mikola, but I also like have a question. Like if theoretically this proxy is more like an optional thing that you can or don't have to use, like it's not this like fully like infrastructure security thing that the administrator needs to force you to use. Like you can either opt in or opt out. And I believe like it makes what in this case sort of like there can be users that want to opt out, and I don't think it makes sense for the admin to say you cannot opt out because I said so. That's like what Mikola just said, and also like I'm with Mikola. Like I don't think it's a generally good idea that you can change the configuration. Like I want to use proxy, and suddenly like something can change the configuration, and I will not use proxy just because like something that is invisible to me changed. Compared like, okay, from my perspective, I'm still using proxy, but like the proxy no longer actually does the caching. That's what we want, but it's just like a transparent. I believe that's a better sort of way how to handle any sort of disaster. The disaster that can happen. At least that's my opinion in this regard. But like these like I as admin needs to do or for somebody to do this or that, like unless everybody needs to go through proxy for some reason, like theoretically the proxy is just an optional add-on. So there I don't understand this like forceful administration. If it can be achieved in different way that are more akin to how I think like this kind of situation should be handled.
I lost my hand in queue somewhere, but I'd still like to speak. And it's about, so there's 3 points of control, right? There's the parameter, there's the global override, and then there's a tenant config map the user could put in. What if we just got rid of the middle one? And that maybe would make it more clear that we say the way you use this is the parameter. You use the parameter all the time, everywhere. And we have a way to break glass in case the proxy is broken. Then it's like the design principle, Barak, is like clear in the first place. It's the parameter, just like everything else. It's always the parameters. And because we're nervous about the proxy, we have a way to turn it off. Gal, then Barak.
Barak, you can go before me.
Yeah, you know, you can echo the sentiment I like how I see it in my head. You know, the tenant level thing is just trying to cater to the needs of you know, tenant managers, right? We do see the pattern where big teams tend to have tenant management, smaller tenant management teams that take care of a lot of stuff. So I wanted to give them the break glass option as well. If you guys generally think that's redundant, then sure, you know, less code, who cares?
if I could jump in, just I think that maybe it's just about the API service we expose, that they're expected to manage almost everything in terms of their pipeline run parameters. And so we give them a different way to do it, but only for this one feature. If we're gonna, maybe we should explore it. We want to give them config maps for lots of pipeline options, but if we did, we should think about that as a set. Sorry, Gal, I jumped.
I agree with what you've just said. I wanted to also say, in general, we need to see that, Mikolat, what you said about, so maybe we can, if there is an issue, we can replace it with transparent proxy or something like that. In general, we need to see that in case of emergency, we have really like simple SOPs to tackle issues, because not always the SMEs or the team that knows the service the best would be the one that could handle it. So like having like a switch that someone can turn off, and anyone can do it by following an SOP, like simple, right? Who doesn't know to change text in a file, rather than changing the entire deployment of proxies, which requires some skills that not everyone will have. So in general, when it comes to operations and handling like disasters, we should target as simple as possible, processes.
Okay, let's close this conversation for the call right now, but take it back to the pull request. It was set to be decided on today. We should kick that out for at least a week. So we'll move the milestone out to next Thursday, just to give time for this conversation to develop and see where we get in the pull request. Sound good?
Yeah, just want to kind of make the final point. My key takeaway is to remove the middleman, so to speak. Remove the namespace level setting, and hopefully that will simplify things down to the point where everybody is comfortable with this. So I'll go ahead and make those changes when I can. But please, if you have more comments, concerns, go ahead and place them on the PR.
Thanks for raising it, Baruch. I'm looking back at the agenda now. Let me look next. Mikola, Adam, ADR on new component model.
Yes, so we prepared ADR for the new component structure. So as we see it, so it's ready. It's been there for over a week. So we're actively asking you to say anything if you have. So this topic was already discussed some time ago, and we have decided which direction to go. But yeah, now we have it open like publicly, and so please take a look if you are interested. So according to the plan, we would like to merge it in a week, like make the decision, because it's already a week ready and present. So please take a look if you have something to say.
Thanks. I'll leave the floor open for discussion for a minute if people have comments on it. In the background, I will assign milestones to it. I think according to process, Mikola, so it got announced on the call today. So it'll be 2 weeks from today will be the point at which KGC tries to make a call on it. And that's November 20th.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it, Gal.
Yeah, thank you for writing, you and your team for writing this ADR. I reviewed it and pasted some comments, and there are some that I would like to bring up here to hear other opinions from other people. First of all, there is also the GitOps ADR that was approved. It means that most of the basically, we are not going to let users do mutating changes or to create resources through the UI. They would do it using GitOps. So I think that there should be, and this new model will require UI changes. So I think that those two should be coordinated. So for example, not like doing the changes for the new model and then remove all the mutating actions because of the GitOps model.
That's already happening.
Okay, great. Great. So maybe like mentioning it on the idea, so, because I asked because I didn't know it. This is why I've asked. The other thing is about component nudging. To me, it feels like today it is not in the right service. So there is Mint Maker, which is responsible for doing dependency updates. But we also have build service that trigger something the same, dependency update pipeline. The only difference is that the build service, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the build service trigger those pipelines immediately after the push pipeline completes. My question is, and based on what I've read in the ADR, there would be needed some changes to the functionality of component nudging because of the new model. So there is work to be done. The question is if it won't be better to remove this functionality from the build service, leave the build service responsibility for the onboarding, and move the responsibility for dependency update to the service that was created for dependency update.
Go. Thanks for raising that about the nudging. It's something that I've talked with Adam about in the past. I think it would be great to leverage a single, or to unify the processing around this, because nudging is just a renovate pipeline. What's a renovate job? I mean, Mint Maker is doing the same thing, so we're duplicating things. It's also we've raised, or we've hit issues in the past because this is coupling between the build service and release service, which, because it has the dependency on their release plan emission, and this coupling has actually caused issues with some users as well. I know some people that are trying to improve their file-based catalog pipeline. They don't want to have all of these release plan emission mapped pull specs to be nudged as well. It's something that I have thought about recently as well. I mean, another potential option is if we don't have a way for Mint Maker to handle it itself, maybe it can just be an integration test scenario, because the integration test scenarios run after the build anyway. And then I think that if that were the case, then build service would no longer need to watch all the pipeline runs to see when this has to happen. So we'd remove a whole set of watches on all these pipeline runs, which would be beneficial as well. So I would support further conversations around that if we want to have those. Nicola.
Thank you. So, Andrew, you've answered some of my questions. So, in general, I'm okay with moving it from build service. So it would simplify stuff a lot. And yes, you're right. Not watching pipeline runs would reduce significantly resources that the service uses. However, like the first problem which you already addressed, that nudge should happen right after the build. Second, that we need to take into account users' config, and that would be possible with integration test scenario. I'm not sure about Mint Maker run, because we would need to somehow map the settings from the config map or in some other way. And the third, well, not really a problem, but we need to do the migration, which is shouldn't be really hard. If we move into integration test scenario, we just need to read component spec and create corresponding objects. But in the end, such a move would pause development of this feature, because we can just remove the fields right now in the new model, or maybe we alternatively can find a compromise and keep the old mechanism in place for transitional period. And meanwhile, we should prioritize this move so we are not blocking current development of the feature.
Adam, go ahead, and then Andrew.
Because so if I may, like I should preface it like I'm not against moving nudging itself from the build service. I believe it would make it easier for everybody if build service is much more concentrated on builds and this other activity is somebody else's problem. It can be a little bit deceiving that like MinMaker is doing renovate and nudging is also using renovate, but in the essence, there are very different activities, and nudging requires like very specific configuration to it. Not something we cannot be done in different ways. Just because they are using both renovate doesn't mean necessarily that it's easy to just like move it to MinMaker. That said, like I believe it's a good conversation to continue to how to replace nudging from the build service with some other like nudging mechanism. And if nudging is needed at all, which I believe it is, but how it can be done like differently and better. And then that maybe is also connected to like we are scoping and looking into orchestrated builds, where nudging is a big part of this feature. Like the TLDR feature is that, for example, you can wait for 5 builds to finish and then do the nudge, like as one big nudge for the 5. One big nudge instead of 5 separate nudge because we have 5 builds. And I believe maybe like together with this discussion, we can open up the discussion like, okay, how to do nudging differently. Like, I believe we should continue with using the old system for now and replace the nudging next year, as it's its own debate that has to happen, and it's enough time for it to happen. So, sorry, Andrew, you can go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that trying to transition the nudging behavior to the same process as renovate is not straightforward. The most straightforward thing would be to move it to an integration test scenario and to just run the same pipeline that build service configures and runs. If we want to change things in the future further, then I think that can be done. That likely would, or I imagine it wouldn't be too much of a breaking change. So if we wanted to consider stripping it out right now, I suspect that any change involving MintMaker would not be in scope, because there's a lot of things that need to be done before that. If that's what we decide we want to do eventually, then we can certainly figure that out. If we think that will further improve our maintenance burden, so we don't have to have, I think even for those 2 different pipelines, we use different renovate images. Like there's very little that's common between them other than the fact they're both renovate under the hood. Adam?
Yeah, I was just going to give a +1 around what you're talking about, Adam O, with orchestrated builds. And I think component groups unlock that by allowing teams to have a now arbitrary hierarchy. This is something that I've been thinking about a lot with Java, where there's mono repos are very common in Java ecosystem. A good example from what middleware is building right now is like Camel K, where they have a single repo that is producing over 100 artifacts per build. And there's a lot of like cross kind of dependencies. within those. And so for something like that to build 100 different artifacts per build, that gets crazy expensive over time. And so finding ways for, and we even have teams now that have onboarded to Konflux where they have a similar monorepo concern. And to do any kind of like nudging thing is hard, if not impossible for them today. So just kind of saying, long-term, I like where this is going.
Go ahead, Nicola, and then Gal.
Yeah, so as of now, we need to decide, I believe, which way we would like to go, because if, so I like also the idea to have it in integration service more than passing it to MintMaker, because it would be easier to implement and the migration would be way easier in the end. But what we need to know now, whether we need to include this in the new model. So if we are aiming to move it from build service, I strongly believe that in the new component structure, we shouldn't have nudges at all. So for transitional period, we support old model. And when we remove old fields, so in the new model, we won't have nudges anymore. So we still have time to develop, and we won't do migration 2 times by removing one set of fields and then removing other set of fields and so on. So I think if there is no objections right now, then we will remove nudging from the new component model, and it goes to integration service according to current plan. Sounds good? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I like the proposal to run it as part of the integration, as part of an integration test, or maybe we should start call it a post-build pipeline to make it generic. I think also the advantage is that users will have the visibility to see those pipelines in their namespace, which I really like. So yeah, I support what Mikola just suggested. About orchestrated build, I'm not aware of that, so it would be an ADR about it, so everyone can see what is planned. Yes.
Awesome. Looking at time, we're at 8:50. Let's try to end sooner. We've got one last point on the agenda, though. Yiftach, can you give everybody an announcement?
Yeah, we have the governance committee elections coming up. There is an issue in GitHub calling for a nomination. Please nominate yourself or others. That's it.
I know there was one point of confusion I had heard, which is when does voting happen? It's actually stated in the ticket, but it's not right now as a part of the ticket, right?
It is missing.
Yeah, no,
I'll look into that.
I think the text in there is actually correct. I saw some people wondering if the emojis on the issue were the voting itself, but I think they're not.
Oh no,
no, they're nominations, and then you'll organize an explicit vote later. I think it was November 17th through 19th.
Yes. I can comment on that as well on the ticket.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Thank you again, Yiftach. Thank you, everybody. It was a good call today, right? That was like multiple really good discussions. Felt like a good use of time to me. So thank you, everybody, for coming, participating, bringing your ideas and your respect and willingness to participate. It's just great. So have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.